Thank you, Vin. After your early introduction there, I assume we got your title wrong on the program and you're a marketing manager. Right, just before I kick off, I'm doing a little bit of setting the scene, just a quick little presentation on, I guess, sharing a little bit of my experience, industry experience and observations, and hopefully just creating a bit of food for thought, which your follow-on presentations might lead into. I come from quite a long data background myself, having previously established SQL Services, and I see a couple of SQL Services boys over the back there. I departed selling that company in 2006. For me, information management and data governance are things that I think matter an awful lot in the information age that we're in. And I want to share with you a little bit of my current thoughts about how it's relevant to your sector. So why are we here? What is the challenge? Well, Vin started the discussion around that. I think we're all aware of most of what's on the slide here. There's an explosion of data volumes, explosion of data sources and data types. Those data types are a real challenge to handle in structured databases and becoming a bit of a nightmare for the database administrators of this world to handle and bring forward in an analytical manner. The government is requiring open data compliance and reporting, and that's no small task. Other councils, communities, business, media, all demanding access to data online, all wanting to engage with you on a digital environment. Over the right there, the little thing, a person today is subjected to more information in a day than a person in the Middle Ages in their entire life, and that's only escalating. So regional councils and all local government are under enormous pressure to acquire, manage, collate, analyse, report and disseminate data. That's quite a long list. But there's a duplication of effort and systems and cost going on here, and it really doesn't make sense for you all to be doing this yourselves in exactly the same way, and that's why it's really pleasing to see so many people here today thinking about how they might take a common path on this journey. The challenge to me, or to you, is to find some shared initiatives, to see whether there's opportunity here to work together and to get some smart initiatives that help actually leverage data nationally and help reduce your cost of getting that data published and managed out there. The little graph up here shows the information explosion. So, volume, variety and velocity coming up here exponentially, and ability to analyse. That gap there is just getting bigger and bigger. And is there anyone in the room that feels they're totally in control of their data? Because if you are, you're probably in the wrong conference. Reality is, I travel all around the country. Over the last 28 years, worked with CIOs, IT managers, general managers, all walks of business. Not one of them is in control of their data. Everybody has data issues. I think what we're starting to see now is more people are becoming aware of their data issues because they're trying to do more with their data than just store it for standard transactional processing. So external data requirements. I don't need to tell you this list, you're all well aware of it. That's the core list of the demands that get placed on you, and that's without going out to your community in any way. It's an awful lot of work, and the bit down the bottom that's really relevant, there's no extra budget for this effort, which I think you all well appreciate. So to me, some of the data issues that need attention by regional councils is environmental data that's historically stored in silos. Scientists have a long history of working in their verticals, and that's just to be expected from how it's evolved, but that does create problems on getting data to work across the organisation. Data collected in one context may be used in another context, and sometimes out of context. So therefore metadata is required to give data context. However, we've got a bunch of ageing scientists approaching retirement, and I think the figure I heard recently, the average age of New Zealand scientists is something like 55, really a lot older than I thought. That's a real problem because the reality is a lot of that metadata is sitting in their heads or in their notes buried somewhere over here in a filing cabinet. So questions I throw out there. How is data quality established in your organisation? How is data to be published validated? How is published data shared? How is published data integrated into your organisation? If you're working with published data from external sources, how do you integrate that back into your internal analysis? And how can the cost of data analysis and publishing be shared? So those are sort of the food for thoughts that spring to mind for me that we should be thinking about today and exploring as we pass through from the speakers. And when we come back to the panel session at the end of the day, I hope some of these questions are the ones that we're throwing on the table to be considering what can you do about it, rather than we just have a talk fest and everybody goes home. So I thought, well, what are some of the lessons from overseas? I've been doing a bit of research on this for some time now, and what are some of the lessons we see? Overseas, they're probably ahead of us in dealing with some of these issues, in Europe, UK, US and Australia. I think there's lessons to be learned out there. We don't have to do everything the hard way. So in Europe, we've got this G8 group, and they've got the principles of open data infrastructure. So make data discoverable, so it will be used efficiently. Make it accessible with as fewer restrictions as possible. Make data understandable, in other words, get that metadata around it so that you can actually extract usable knowledge out of it. Make it efficiently and effectively managed so that you can guarantee it's available and useful long-term for reuse. Reuse of data is one of the things that's probably not going on a lot in New Zealand today. A lot of research projects, science data is used for the research project and they're not reused because it's not put into an appropriate format with the appropriate metadata to support its reuse. Very valuable data. We need to train people who are able to put efficient mechanisms for managing data into place. And we need to establish useful metrics for evaluating the impact of investments around data. At the moment, it is incredibly hard, as some of you I'm sure will know, to build a business case for data management or data governance in organisations. The cost-benefit analysis, the return on investment type numbers are really, really hard to quantify. So what else do they say about data? Well, you need to have change the data culture within organisations. You need to have discoverability, accessibility, interpretation and reuse, and data management stewardship as 5 key principles. So changing the data culture. By default, data should be open unless there's a reason for it to be closed or secure. All digital objects need to have adequate metadata to support discovery. We need to have registration of data, objects across the shared environment. Accessibility. We need trusted repositories available nationally, but we need to have some certification rules. Otherwise, we're publishing rubbish, and garbage in is garbage out. And we need to have access protocols, of course. With regard to interpretation of reuse, we need to register data schemas in open environments to help interpret the content of the data. And lastly, we need to govern our data. We need stewardship around data. We need to define policies for access, preservation and reuse of data over time. Now, today, this stuff might feel like it's looking too far ahead. You know, I'm not asking you to set up a shared national data infrastructure between you all tomorrow, but I genuinely believe where you're heading that you will have some of this and you need to have some of this between you at some point in the future. It may be targeted to certain portfolios of data or certain centres of excellence that you establish between you, but these are the types of things that you need to put in place if you want it to be successful and sustainable. Over in Australia, they use this little model here, which is quite a useful way of looking at it, that a lot of New Zealand data and regional councils would be sitting in this sort of environment at the moment. The government initiatives around open data are very much targeted at changing this. But this is where you want to get to over here, managed, connected, findable, reusable. There's a fair bit of work to get from there to there. You can't read this very well. I'm sorry, I just had to convert the slides quite quickly this morning. This is a maturity model from Creative Commons around data management, data governance maturity. And as you're moving up the tree here, we're starting down here at the bottom with very reactive, managed, defined, quantitatively managed and optimised. So you're moving up the tree of maturity in terms of how you manage your data. So, but down here, it's all completely random and disconnected. By the time you get to a level 3, you've got some good organisation going on around your data. Everybody knows what's happening. By the time you get up to here, it's being measured and monitored. Up here, it's a continuous improvement program. If you move on to this table, I don't expect you to read it. I'm just showing you this is a maturity table around data management. So 1 to 5 levels. over here, and down here, it's defining across these different levels here what you expect to see at those different levels of maturity. What are the activities or outcomes around data management, data governance? This is the type of thing I believe you need to have in place to get this stuff working and sustainable long term. There's another little view of the world, which is just demonstrating the enabling technologies that help make discover, access, interpretation and reuse of data. This one here is interesting, European Shared Data Services. These guys are really taking it to the next step. They have developed a really significant European shared data environment, which has now been commercialised, and they have these different services here. So this is depositing your data, sharing your data, securing your data, staging your data for computation, and up here finding your data. So they have all these different services that people effectively are dropping onto a data services bus. I don't know if people have heard of an enterprise services bus. Effectively, where you're publishing data objects onto an environment and you can subscribe to those data services and use them as you need to on and off the bus. So what needs to happen back in little old NZ? Well, for us to be getting the control of this, we need data standards to be developed, including a taxonomy. We need data storage platforms to be established, and that would probably be a number of them. It's not all going to reside in one place, most likely. It could reside in different regional councils and different shared data centres. Valuable data sets need to be identified and protected. The reality is you can't control everything, and if you think you can, you're kidding yourself. So you've got to figure out what matters most, what is most valuable, and protect it. Data deposit, retention and archiving policies are needed nationally across those data sets that you consider valuable between you. Data management plans need to become part of your research proposals up front. So when someone's putting forward a research proposal, what is going to happen with that data? How is it going to be managed, published, archived through the whole process of its life cycle so it gets reused after the research project is finished? Now I know some people are doing that today. I have seen evidence of that happening, but it's not happening across the board. The data governance function is required across national data sets of importance, and data needs to be treated as a corporate asset, and no different to a property asset. We build these buildings and then we put in place asset maintenance plans and everything. We look after our buildings, but we don't look after our data very well. So that's my little quick starter for 10. So let's get on with it. The one thing I would like to say is let's please remember we're here to actually provide some useful outcomes, or to try to. So it's not just a talk fest. Yes, good to discuss, good to debate, but let's keep focused on the fact at the end of the day we want some takeaways so we actually can make a difference out there when we go back to our environments. Right, that'll do me.